Good evening. Good evening. I am Tamara L. and welcome to another installation of Just Another Messenger, where we raise the situational urgency and consciousness regarding today's current events. Now, each episode of Just Another Messenger will continue to dive deep into the historical past by examining the philosophies, legal system, and political decisions that continues to influence our daily lives. Now, in this week episode, a fight for the people, messengers for liberation, will uncover the fearless voices of freedom fighters who shaped the messengers of liberation, leaders, strategists, and revolutionaries who risk it all for the people. Now, don't forget to hit the subscribe button over on YouTube, share and like, to be a part of the conversation. You wouldn't want to miss it. Now, let's go ahead and get our disclaimer started here. Let me bring that up. We're going to do something a little different today. We're going to add that. We're going to do something a little different today. Now, the views, opinions, and thoughts are the protective expression of Tamara L. for storytelling and educational purpose and does not provide statutory counseling for any United States color of law jurisdictional proceedings, but my information is very helpful. All right, let's talk about what's going on around the world. Now, Trump and Elon Musk continue to shape up these agencies regarding fraud and wasteful spending. Now, if you go over onto our YouTube page at Just Another Messenger, you'll see where we show where we in the Chevron deference that we show how that case, that landmark case, plays right into correlation with what's going on between these agencies being ripped apart. Now, we're going to do an expose coming up shortly to show the correlation between the Chevron deference, which was overturned by the agencies controlled, that this occurred like last July of 2024. Now, if you go over on our YouTube page at Just Another Messenger, there's a video titled "Why the Courts Was Stripped Chevron's Power Over Federal Agents." It's going to give you a little overview of that. Now, let's get into this homeland of death that's going on, this fight for colonies and their sovereignty. Now, the countries of Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali continues to fight for decolonization. They continue that fight for decolonization. And in the interim, Trump cuts off aid to Mali and Niger. These agents, Mali, their prime minister say, we can't worry about that at this time because we have to deal with self-determination and self-sufficiency. So that is what they're focusing on at this time, no matter what the aid being cut off. Now, let's also continue to evaluate Hamas. Let's continue to evaluate this fight that's going on with Hamas. They fight for their homeland sovereignty over Israel that has reached their handover since their arriving in 1954. Now, let's look at this in a nutshell. Could the Jews be at their last stop after being evicted from 109 countries? Let's think of that. And let's think about, what does a European country actually has to gain for their allyship with Israel? Are they complicit with that, with the allied with Israel in this overthrow, this fight that's taking place between Israel and Hamas? We have to look at that in more detail because we're talking about decolonization within itself, this fight for homeland or death that's going on, not only in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. It's this fight for homeland or death that's also going on over in between Hamas and the Palestinians and Israel. Now, as that continues, you have this deportation, this immigration deportation that continues with the illegal immigrants that's going on right here in Americas that, and you have to think about what makes a person an immigrant. This is dealing with status and allegiance. So the status and allegiance is not there for those people that has left their home country, immigrated out of their home country over into the allegiance of the United States. So they said, okay, you got to go back. You did that wrong. You got to go back. So that's taking place. Now, this peace talk This peace talk began with Trump and Zelensky. It did start on a good start. Zelensky has his guard up against Trump, and I can understand that after seeing the flip flop that Trump did with Netanyahu over the Gaza Strip in that interview. Zelensky said, I'm not trusting anything that coming out your mouth. So Zelensky fired back at Trump and slammed him for Russian disinformation. Then Trump turned around and slammed Zelensky and labeled him a dictator. I mean, and that got to be very funny for Trump to be labeling someone as a dictator. Now, he took that book right after the Decepticons playbook with that statement when he did that. Come on now, Trump, you calling someone a dictator. You was called a dictator for like 4 or 5 years, and they're still calling you that. So I thought that was very funny. Now, we're going to hold on to see if Trump going to play chess with Putin due to the recent public law 11850. Go over and look at that law, guys. That has to do with that TikTok law. And if you look at section G, it's going to say other. And that deals with the law regarding repayment for the war that Russia must repay back to the United States for that war with Ukraine. So we're going to see how the United States is going to handle that. Or will Trump play checkers with Zelensky? That's going to be the overall contentious with that. And let's briefly, in a nutshell, let's talk about these planes crashing. I mean, it is amazing to see that since the beginning of the fiscal year, the 2025, there's been over 87 plane crashes that has taken place. Now, don't start screaming for reform, because their governance, they have a governance to service these planes here. So that's something they must do. So when you start screaming for that, no, you're likely to create a problem that, it's like, they'll create a problem, then they'll give you a law that strips away your privacy, strips away your ability to freely move about. So be careful about the screaming for, oh, we need more laws regarding these planes. No, they need to service the planes as they're mandated to do. Now, lastly, we're going to turn our attention to Elon Musk and this Doge, D-O-G-E, this Doge. We're going to turn our attention over to Elon Musk for a moment, with him finding $4.7 trillion in the Treasury payments with the missing codes. And we're going to say missing codes because they had a hashtag over the missing codes, which makes it impossible to trace. Wow, what makes it impossible to trace? Now, if anyone that's in IT, what would make it very difficult to trace? Now, when you're in this data world, what makes it difficult to trace data is out there, and it comes from improper coding. And so, which means to tell me, when you look into that, you'll say, wow, they must be on that means that the government systems are on the old systems, because if you had a new system other than DOS, the DOS, you have to put data fields in there or it's going to spit out error codes. Okay, so you're telling me now, let's think back about this. In 1999, there was this huge propaganda campaign that the world was coming to end. Now, I know our people that's old enough, we went through this. So in 1999, there was this big scare about the entire world was coming to an end. The world was coming to an end. So only thing that came to an end when it converted over from 1999 to 2000, only thing that came to an end was the software DOS system. That is the only thing that died. So that's when the systems converted over to C++. Now, and also converted over to more SQL Server, which is programming. So when they said missing codes, I'm like, that means that the government still have old systems that they're working in. That's the only way that you wouldn't be able to properly code something, because in a C++ or SQL system, you have to have those data fields filled in, or it's going to output is going to just be empty, null and void. So that lets you know that the agency, the Treasury agency, is behind. They're severely behind. So, we had our what's going on around the world. We wanted to do something different. And before we get started, we're going to take a quick break. All right, and we are back here and we're going to get started our housekeeping rules before we get this show started. All right, and the bottom of the screen, we're going to have this. Please continue to support our channel as we continue to grow. We're not currently monetizing on YouTube because you have to grow to 1,000. And even after having 1,000 network subscribers, I don't think that's something we will be interested in doing because that's how they cut your wisdom when you get inside that pay structure. All right, so continue to support the channel via Cash App at $, just another messenger. And you can also go over and find us over on YouTube. That's what we're trying to build that platform at Just Another Messenger. And you can follow us on X at JAM, JAM _404 podcast. And if you'd like to be a part of the show or know someone would like to be a part of a show, please send us an email to justanothermessengerpodcast@gmail.com. Now, we're going to leave this donate up throughout the show just as a reminder. So someone had to say, Tamara, put the donate button up. We're going to have it up. We're going to leave it up. All right. Now, we're going to continue on. Now, today's episode is brought to you like had a really good conversation. And I tell people that I had a conversation with a brother. His name Toriana Obashingo L. And he posted some information online regarding it was a video, and this brother was saying how the show with Kendrick Lamar was another bread and circus. Basically you can't believe anything that these people say. It's another way of just keeping our people asleep, much like the anthem with I'm Black and I'm Proud. So, and I was like, well, we have to look at this in a lot of different ways because music, a lot of times music moves the culture, it wakes the culture up. And, so that conversation we had brought about today's episode. We're going to dive into the freedom fighters and the liberators throughout the journey. And we're going to talk about what is actually not being discussed. And the last freedom fighter is the most powerful one. And that's Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the one that's been hidden from mainstream. And it's really the caveat towards what liberation means for the melanated people, the Asiatic people, things of that nature. So let's get into that. Now, this week, we're going to highlight for Negro History Week. We're going to highlight. Now, I spoke to this lady, Talangbi Ogunliwi. This book, The Unconquered. Now, I spoke to her years ago when she published the book and came out with it, and I hope she appreciated me giving her a shout out for being a part of Negro History Week for the month of February 2025. And this book it's a great book that discusses the events and the historical events that took place during the Yamasee and Gullah Geechee War. I would encourage everyone to go to Amazon and get this book. This is a great body of knowledge, a book to have in your library. Okay. Now, as you can see here, this is an illustration that depicts the Yamasee War. And as you can see, look at our brothers. They have their fez, they have their kilt. They fought in their kilts, and it's not a skirt, it's a kilt. And also you see the red flag that you must always have your flag. You must always fly your flag when you are out in a battlefield. Like your flag is your signal. Like when people are transporting out here in this public domain and they say, where's your license plate and thing, that's the flag, and it indicates who your allegiance is to for what nation. And we're going to bring this all home. We're going to bring this all together. All right. Now, about The Unconquered, this book, The Unconquered, is an historical novel about the 1715 Yamasee War and the first of 3 successful Gullah Geechee wars that were fought and won by the Yamasee people and the Gullah Geechee men and women held captive in the United States during the 18th and 19th century. It is a riveting but entertaining period piece based on factual historical documents and accounts dealing with the fearless men and women who fled their oppressors and captors in South Carolina, fought back, outwitted, and defeated their former enslavers, and thrived in the autonomous settlements they built in Florida, Spain, Flowerland. Yes, please take that in consideration. When you look at this war, you're looking at your people, the Yamasee, the Gullah Geechee people. You're looking, as you can tell, the history of the book gives you a lot of detail in what it's about, and it's called The Unconquered. All right, so this is the featured book for this week of Negro History Week. All right, now let's get into it. Now, the question was the performance of Kendrick Lamar, Not Like Us, a political call, or bread and circus? Let's keep in mind, people, music moves the cultural needle forward. So even if the messenger did not speak of nationality, there's still a message in there to be understood. There's a liberation message in there to be understood. Now, when I spoke to the brother, I said, in my opinion, I felt that the performance was 80-20. It was 80% bread and circus because there was an agenda that had to be met. There's a contractual obligation that Kendrick Lamar must meet. You got to remember, he's in contract. He's in contract, so he must meet that contractual obligation. I get that. So it was 80% bread and circus, and I felt it was 10% political, and it was 10% conscious based. So that was my argument. That was my argument regarding the percentage of knowledge. And you know, the respond back was, I think it would have had more weight if he would have came out and gave another symbolism of having a picture, maybe wearing fez and having a picture of Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And I was like, no, that would have been the depth of him, Kendrick Lamar, financially, spiritually, and possibly physically. So say all that, a lot of times, you know, a lot of artists have to move in ways, even though they may not present the information of nationality. Sometimes they have learned that they have to move in a different way. And I think they're moving in a different way because let's look at it. When Kyrie Irving started talking about the Asiatic people being Hebrews, look what they did to Kyrie Irving in his contract. All right. When Diddy started wearing the fez and talking about creating a third political party outside from Democrats and Republicans, they had things on Diddy that would be able to sit him down and cool him down. You got to remember, these are people that has very large followings, right? All right, who else? When okay, so you had Kyrie Irving, you had Diddy, Kanye West. When Kanye started coming out talking about Prophet Noble Drew Ali, started talking about the feds and the Moors, look at the backlash that Kanye West started going through. So a lot of times when you are able to see the blueprint of things that has happened to others, when you move in a space and start uncovering things, then at that point you have to change the playbook of how you put a message out. So like I said, I understand from Kendrick Lamar playbook, that doesn't mean that he's void of understanding nationality. We don't know because he haven't showed that hand publicly, but that would not negate that he has the knowledge to that. So what I'm saying is that I think we need to, at this time, the momentum need to move forward as the cultural needle is still moving forward with the consciousness, the consciousness being awakened through the music of Kendrick Lamar, Not Like Us. It's time to now be a part of the wave and truly insert the national principles of sovereignty that the Asiatic people are due. So let's look at some freedom fighters, and we can learn from these past marches that has taken place. Let's look at that. Now, and this is what I say, like at the week couple of days after when we aired last Wednesday, the viewing for the Super Bowl was at 133.5 million views. It had surpassed Michael Jackson. That was just in 2 days. Now let's look at a week later. Kendrick Lamar set record as first U.S.-led artist to surpass a billion streams in 2025. A billion in 1 week, people. This is 1 week. This is now, if this is not a message to be a part of the cultural push of understanding, this is what I talk about. It's about being a part of the cultural push, because once the doors are open up, we should take advantage of that. That's why we're doing this episode. That's why I'm continuing the episode and moving forward, dropping more seeds of knowledge of truth into the minds of those who are now awakened through the cultural music of Kendrick Lamar, Not Like Us, to help understand the Not Like Us journey and where the Not Like Us journey movement should continue to move forward. Let's get into it. Now, has been long freedom fighters that continued the journey. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, things of that nature. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to look here at Elizabeth Freeman. Let's talk about her. Let's talk about Elizabeth Freeman. Now, just imagine living in a world where slavery is legal, because now we're not in that world where slavery is legal, but you hear whispers of a new idea. All men are born free and equal. Now, Elizabeth Freeman, her name was not that. They called her Mom Bett. So she was born around 1744. Mom Bett was enslaved in Massachusetts under the Ashley family, which means that was her master. Colonial John Ashley, he was a well-known landowner, judge, and politician. He worked with John Adams. So he was instrumental in helping to write the Massachusetts Constitution of 1780. This is very important to see this. This was not the United States at the time. All these different colonial corporations they was creating their own constitution. And it's all going to bring it together. I'm going to bring it together. This was called self-determination. They were self-determining from the King of England, in which they had immigrated out of and immigrated into a new jurisdiction, a new world, newfound land, and they was self-determining and creating their own nation by state. This was nation state. So Mom Bett, she overheard discussions about the Massachusetts Constitution of 1780, and she sat there, and one of the things that Article 1, she just could not, she was just frozen. She could not get past it, in which it stated that all men, they heard her writing this Article 1, that all men are born free and equal. She realized something. If that law was true, that they're writing down on this parchment and they're putting into law, she could be free too, because she knew in her spirit, that this subjugation was unnatural. Now, in 1781, after the Massachusetts Constitution was laid down into their law, she approached a lawyer that was a part of John Ashley. She approached him and said, "Hey, I need you to represent me as my lawyer." She said, "I need to sue for my freedom," and she did just that. So what she did, they went down to the Berkshire County Courthouse, and they argued that slavery was illegal under the new state constitution. They argued it was legal, and the verdict, and guess what the verdict was? They ruled in her favor. They said, absolutely, it is illegal. And she became the first Negro woman freed under the Massachusetts law. Then she changed her name. She was self-determining to Elizabeth Freeman. Now, this is what we talked about, self-determination. Now, this was Mom Bett, 1744. Now I want to show, I want to hold up something. I want to hold up a book. I want to hold up a book here. I want to hold up this book. Now, this book is called written by I don't know if you can see the name. If you can't see the name, I don't know. It may be hard to. Well, let me just give you the name of it. This book was written by Senator Mike Lee, author of Our Lost Constitution, and it's called Written Out of History. It's the forgotten founders who fought big government. Now, in this book, believe it or not, this was written by Mike Lee. He was a senator. Mike Lee was a senator. He was a U.S. senator. Now, this lets you know these senators know who we are. They know who we are. He was a Senator Mike Lee. He was a Republican in Ohio. Now, chapter 6, he talks about Mom Bett, the slave who claimed her rights. Okay. Now let's think about with some other people that he talked about in this book. Let's see what the other people he talked about in this book. He talks about Aaron Burr in the abuse of executive power. He talked about Luther Martin, the Protestant sober analyst from a drunk founder. He talks about Mercy Otis Warren, the woman who blocked an American king. He talks about John Adai Conestoga, Ben Franklin, and the Confederacy in the wilderness. He talked about how the founders, the Lord proprietors of Philadelphia, how they got their knowledge from the indigenous people of the land. It talk about the Bill of Rights, Eldridge Gary, Dangerous Idea. What is talk about? Here go Mom Bett. He talk about James Odens and also about George Mason. This is a really good book. I would encourage you to get this book. This book is really good. I'm not going to read it. So I encourage you to go get this book. This is a really good book to have. It's by Senator Mike Lee, author of Our Lost Constitution, Written Out of History. Now, and it highlights Mom Bett in that book. And I'm glad she was able to be highlighted today. All right. So, and this, like I said, the slave who claimed her rights. All right. We're going to continue with this. And let's talk about Robert Smalls. I thought Robert Smalls was a very great person to learn about. And I know a lot of this time they don't talk about this. Now we're talking about messengers. Keep in mind, we're talking about messengers. So we talk about a messenger. We're talking about a messenger of Mom Bett who understood freedom. Understood slavery was unnatural. And she fought for her natural rights for freedom. That's a messenger. Write that seed of message down. This message is going to go forward. Now we're going to get into Robert Smalls. He was a slave who became a congressman. Now, he was born in slavery in 1839. Born into slavery in 1839 in Bedford, South Carolina. Robert Smalls, he worked as a deckhand, which means he has skills. Keep in mind, these people that were enslaved, your skills didn't start. The skills didn't start after enslavement. These were skills that were already a part of the working body that were passed down through their lineage from their father, their grandfather, and things like that. Because trust me, your master is not going to teach you a skill. So that skill was taught through the lineage, and you became more viable as you were able to have the skills to be able to do the job, to get the job done that the colonizers needed to be able to for more commerce, for their commerce. So yeah. So with that, he worked as a deckhand on a Confederate steamship called the CSS Planter during the Civil War. See, he went from the plantation to now he's marketable to work on a Confederate steamship. They needed his skills. Now and he knew that. So he was like, very smart man. On May the 13th, 1862, while the white officers were asleep. The Albion's officer was asleep along shore. Smalls, he dressed in the captain's uniform along with a small crew of enslaved men. They took control of the CCC planter ship. They tricked him. They took control of the ship. They made it like, hey, and it's funny because his actions, they were able to go past other people and not be seen. And his actions helped free not only himself, he freed his crew and their families. And then what he did, he provided the Union with valuable, intelligent information about Confederate defenses. So he became very helpful and marketable for the Union against the Confederacy. So you got to remember, this was a war going on. So he was able to utilize his skill for that, and then he personally lobbied to Abraham Lincoln to allow Black men to fight in the Union Army. At that time, that was the classification, Black men. They were classified as Black men. So he personally lobbied for them to fight in the Union, and he figured if they're coming along to fight in the Union, in his mind, he thought that was a part of the liberation that was going forward to help liberate the brothers from the plantations. We're going to go ahead and get into this war, and that's going to liberate us from the plantation. We're going to get into this war, and they assumed that it would free them in total. So can you imagine that was a thought process for liberation, to trade yourself off a plantation into a war? Now, after the war, Smalls became the first Black congressman in U.S. history. That said a lot. Now, we're looking at these messages here. We're looking at these messages, how, our men of valor, our men and women of valor in the 1700s and the 1800s, they were creating roadmaps. They were creating roadmaps for liberation. They always knew that they were not a part of the colonial state system. And then they also knew they were not a part of the United States system. But there came a point where assimilation started occurring. Assimilating into the United States system started occurring, and that was for protection. It was for protection. And it happened. So let's look at that. Let's look at Callie House. I think this one is very important. Callie House. In 1894, she founded, now this was the first fight for reparations in the United States. So when you see people talking about reparations today, this is not a new fight. We always remembered, that what we were going through was unnatural. And we always knew that there was a compensation to be had for what they just came out of. Because they were just coming out of this, and they knew it was unnatural, and they knew there was a price to be paid for the unnatural enslavement for work labor and removing them from their land to work someone else's business and plantation for their buildup in commerce. And at that time, they were becoming broken financially and spiritual in the process. So they knew that, hey, you guys owe us. You need to compensate us for the destruction of our business, the destruction of our family. So you have Callie House that came along. Callie House in 1894, she co-founded the National Ex-Slaves Mutual Relief Bounty and Pension Association, MRBPA. And the mission was to secure pensions and financial compensation for formerly enslaved Negroes. And by 1900, she grew a membership of over 300,000 members. Now, just think about this. Over 300. Now, internet didn't even exist. TikTok, YouTube, none of these social sites exist. But these people, not only Callie House was able to build a membership. You have others that was able to build a large membership, such as Garveyites, Marcus Garvey, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, you know, the one that's in jail now, Dr. York, you know, and that was without the advent of social media. Now we have to ask ourselves, besides the clicking and ticking for shaking and baking for followers and all other sexual deviant behavior, there's not a buildup and movement that exists for the fight. It's like there's a forgotten message of not like us. This nation, our nation has been removed. And it's not, this new nation is not like the nation that we have been removed from. So there's been a castration of that, and there's no fight or no unison to be able to move into that space of self-determination and self-sufficiency. But yet, you see people will clap. You see people will, they would clap, they would rejoice of seeing and hearing about the fight that Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali is going in Africa, but you don't see that you're in a worse position. The Asiatic people in America is in a worse position than those in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. We're in a worse position than them. Tamara, why we're in a worse position? Let's ask that. Let's probe on that question. Why are we in a worse position? Because I had this conversation before, and they said, "Well, Tamara, why are we in a worse position than the people in the countries of Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali?" I'm gonna tell you why. We're in a worse position because we don't have access to the land. We don't have access to the land. That's why we are in a worse position. We have no viable way to control commerce. None. Let's think about it. We're going to think about every single thing that is in commercial exchange, building, everything comes from the earth. Okay. Everything. What do you mean by that? What do you mean, Tamara? It comes from the earth. Let's look at a house. It comes from the trees. All right. What about the electrical? The electrical comes from copper. It comes from copper, comes from zinc. We can go on and on and on. You can name something. Everything that's in your clothing, cotton, even if it's synthetic. Anything that's synthetic, still the base of it has to come from the earth in order to produce something synthetic. Even with prescription drugs, the base of everything in prescription drugs has to come, the base of it comes from the earth in order to make a viable product to sell. Everything. There's not anything that's exchanging, because you got to remember the medium exchange at that time was the resources. So when you remove a people away from the land, they do not have access to all the resource that can create the monetary system of commerce for that people. These people are currently castrated. They're culturally castrated, you're financially castrated, you're spiritually castrated. So that's why they're in a better position than everyone in America, because you don't even realize that you're under subjugation and occupation and usurpation. You don't understand that. So let's look at what Callie House said. Callie said, the mission was to secure pensions and financial compensation for formerly enslaved Negroes. Now, by 1900, she grew a membership over 300,000 members and collected dimes and pennies from Southerners for the movement. This was a movement. Now, the post office and the Justice Department accused her of fraud, claiming she was misleading Negro communities into believing reparations were even possible. Get that. So when she put the membership in the mail, now keep in mind, the post office is another form. It's another form of law. So this is how they said, okay, because you put the membership form in the mail and people sent back money in the mail to you, they were able to utilize that she was frauding the people through the membership application, because there was no way, that we're not going to pay reparations. She didn't know that. How would she know that if she's creating this membership? Now, in 1917, she was arrested and sentenced to a year and a day in prison on bogus mail fraud charges. Yeah, she did a year and a day. Let's look at this. I want to present this. Let me share my screen real quick. I want to share something with you. All right. I want to share this with you. Let's look at this. All right. Let's look at that. Let's look at that. How do we make this bigger? All right. Now, this was the bill. This was the bill we're talking about. I hope you can see that. I'm going to spread that out. All right, there we go. Here you go. This was the 56th Congress first session, and there was a Senate bill. It was a Senate bill. When you see S, it's Senate. This was a Senate bill, which means it went first to the upper chamber. So it was Senate Bill 1176 in the Senate of the United States, December the 11th, 1899. And Mr. Pettis, by request, introduced the following bill, which was read twice and referred to the Committee on Pensions. All right, look at what this bill say. It say the bill is to provide pensions for freed men and so forth. And it say, be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assemble, that all persons released from involuntary servitude. Do they say slavery? No, it say involuntary servitude, commonly called slaves, in pursuance of the proclamation of ex-President Abraham Lincoln, dated respectively September the 22nd, 1862 and January the 1st, 1863, and in pursuance of amendments to the Constitution of the several states, it didn't say United States, the several states wherein slavery or involuntary servitude formerly existed, recognized by the federal Constitution and laws of the United States, or by any law, proclamation, decree, or device whereby persons. We're gonna sum this up. Now let's look at here where it say, and in pursuance of the amendments to the Constitution of the several states. At that time of involuntary servitude, it was not, the United States were not formed. They had not confederated during the time of involuntary servitude. But now that they have confederated, that's why it reads several states within slavery or involuntary servitude formerly existed, recognized by the federal. See, now it comes upon a federal constitution, because that's when the proclamation, Emancipation and Proclamation stepped in to release the people from involuntary servitude, and the laws of the United States, or by any law, proclamation, decree, or device whereby persons are held as slaves or involuntary subjects in consequence of race or color or federal or state recognition of involuntary servitude, except for the commission of crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall be and hereby are. All right. That was the law that was put in place. We're going to stop the screening here. Now let's look at something else. We're going to look at something else. I want to feast your eyes on something else here. Oh, it's over there. All right, Tamara, you got to work this thing tonight. Let's look at this tonight. All right, let's look at this. I want to blow this up for you. Now, that was the bill that we talked about. I wanted you to look at this reparation payment chart right here. They talked about. This was the reparation payment chart they had put into place. Age in 1890. If you were 70, you would get a one-time bounty payment of $500 and a monthly pension of $15 for the rest of your life. So this was the reparation schedule that they had put in place, that Callie House had put in place with the Senate bill. And we're going to go down here. So this is this is can you see that? Please listen to my plea. And basically it was composed by, can we see that? It's kind of, it was composed by T. Star Murphy. He was the chief clerk of the National Ex-Slave MRB and P Association of the USA. I mean, these people understood civic order. They understood civic order. So this is when he was making a plea to the people. It was the Magna. Now let's look at this. He said it was the Magna Charta of the American liberty, and it was anti-slavery. I trust you will grow. They hung up this Magna Charta while daughters of America sing and the fathers of the republic shouted. Then the old Liberty Bell rang. The Star Spangled Banner was hosted and commanded to wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave. Notwithstanding all of this, the Negroes was treated rude. So he talked about how they came and built their nation on top of the backs of the indigenous people. Yeah. Wanted you to see that. This was the first movement. This was the first movement of Callie House, the first fight for reparation in the United States. Now we're talking about messengers here. We're talking about messengers. You're gonna have to pick up the seed. You're gonna have to pick up the crumbs as we go along to see how it plays. It all goes into play with one another. Now, this was what this was what their certificate of membership looked like. And they identified how the monies that were being collected, it would aid the sick and bury the dead. And it was also helping in their political movement for reparations. So our people were very politically civic minded people. Now people say, oh, Tamara, they came out of slavery. They couldn't read. Are you kidding me? When I hear that, I mean, literally go sit. Don't say that. Don't ever say that again in your life. Because these are the lies that we have been told. And you have to get to a space. It's 2025. We have all this body of knowledge and wealth of information. And there was the conversation went, there was a question that was posed. Do you think that the question was, do people have access to all this information? We still shouldn't be at this lack of knowledge. This is the conversation with Toriana Obashingo L. I said, first of all, we have to look at it this way. There was a deliberate dumbing down of America that took place with the Board of Education, the General Education Board, Rockefeller curriculum. This was systemic. It was deliberate. This one-track mental exercise of seeing things just through one lens. We were not provided with a secondary alternative lens to weigh on a scale. This secondary alternative lens that we have the ability to look at now, you must want that ability to look at it. Even though the information is out there, it's right and exact. It's people such as myself and others that have various podcasts and messaging of the truth. The information is there. but the people has to be in a mental space. Because you have to remember, I can recall myself, as I explained to him, I recall myself being on that track record of K through 12, then associate degree, bachelor's degree, master's degree, and then before I started working on my PhD, something within me said, this is not it. So when I told myself this is not it and wanted something different, and that's when the difference came in connecting me with people such as Abdullah El Talib Mosley Bey, Taj Tariq Bey, and the likes of that, and to be able to now introduce me to alternative information, and that alternative information of my studies has now rejected pretty much all the information that I thought I knew in those primary studies. It rejected all that information, and it introduced the foundation of truth that has been occurring right up under our nose. And that's why there's been the fight for liberation is sleep, because you don't even know there's a fight going on. You don't even, and even when you wake up, you don't even know how to fight, and you don't know what to fight for. So yeah, I can see why the masses are still in this, unsure state, because you hear the information, but how true could it be deemed to be true? Where in front of you, you have this servicing body that's running the government, the exchange of commerce with other nations, the government nations, they are in the front of that. And you may see actors that look like us that are part of that, but you don't see them renouncing it and saying, hey, this is not right. We're in a de facto status, and the people of this land are not in their. You don't hear them making that argument for us. So how would you be able to say, well, they're in the wrong, when it's hard to see the measurement of truth? Like I said, we must understand that it's like the truth. The truth is treason in an empire full of lies. I think that's the best way I can sum it up. The truth is treason in an empire full of lies. And that's the best way to say it, So let's look back at this membership that they had for the reparations. And these are ways that we can continue to pick these things up and move forward. Now let's look at Bayard Rustin. Who was Bayard Rustin? Bayard Rustin was born in 1912 in Westchester. And I think it's very important to understand Bayard Rustin. He was considered queer and radical. In today's time, we would say, oh, he was LGBTQ, ARPQ, all the alphabets, right? So he was queer and radical in the movement. He was born in 1912 in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Let's put a pin on Westchester, Pennsylvania, because that correlates with Dr. Martin Luther King. He went to school in Westchester, Pennsylvania. And look at this. And he was raised by his grandmother, a Quaker. We're going to stop right there. We're going to stop at a Quaker. We're going to look at that. We're going to look at what is a Quaker. And we're going to bring this together. We're going to look at what is a Quaker. We have to look at this, and I'm going to bring this up for you. I'm going to bring this up. I got to bring this up for you to see this, because I don't like to talk, and I feel like I'm the only one in the room that's seeing stuff. All right, let's look at this. Let's look at the Quakers. So how do I blow this up? How do I make this larger? All right. Let me see. I'm trying to read this. Okay. Let me just read this to you. All right. Now, Quaker. Now, when I talk about Quaker, we're going to be talking about Pennsylvania, and we're going to be talking about William Penn. Now, William Penn, he was born October the 14th, 1644 in London, England. Died July the 30th, 1718. Was an English Quaker leader and advocate of religious freedom who oversaw the founding of the American Commonwealth of Pennsylvania as a refugee for Quakers and other religious minorities of Europe and others, and they say and other religious minorities of Europe. We got to see this. Now we got to see how Reynard, we got to see how Mr. Rustin, Bayard Rustin, played this role of the nonviolent movement. Now, as a Quaker, his grandmother raised him. She was a Quaker, which makes him a Quaker, and who instilled in him the values of nonviolence and social justice. By the 1940s and 50s, Rustin had become an expert in nonviolent resistance, traveling to India to study Gandhi's methods. Now, Gandhi methods are based off Buddhism. Now we're talking about, now you see the moral compass with the civil rights movement in which Martin Luther King adopted. It was a Quaker movement of religious freedom. Now, Bayard Rustin, he played a critical role in advising Dr. King on peaceful protest tactics, helpful to help shape the Montgomery bus boycott and later the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. This is how, see, sometimes people in the background are the ones that are doing the work, doing the fight. So never discount and credit the ones in the background. Now, Rustin's most defiant moment came in 1963 when he was the chief organizer of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Now, this historical event brought over 250,000 people to the National Mall and became a turning point in the civil rights movement. Now, one of the problems that Bayard Rustin came up with against people such as Adam Clayton Powell, Adolf Philip Rudolph. Now, these are other members that was in the liberation movement, but they kind of despised Rustin in a way because they felt like they held something over him. They did not want to, they had a homophobia about them when it came to dealing with Bayard Rustin. He was very open about who he were. He was also friends with the writer, I can't think of his name right about now. So A. Philip Randolph butted heads with Bayard Rustin. Adam Clayton Powell butted head with Bayard Rustin. So these are people that they felt down. And at this time, also Martin Luther King, he didn't know which line to tote with Bayard. And it kind of created a separation because there was a time when the FBI was monitoring the phones of Dr. Martin Luther King. They was monitoring his phones, and in monitoring his phones, they picked up that he had a pretty good, nice relationship with Bayard Rustin. And in that relationship with Bayard Rustin, they understood he was a queer man, so they figured we can put some propaganda out that they're friends. We'll just say they're friends. You know, any propaganda can be spent in any type of way. Being a gay man and being friends with the gay man, that would hurt Dr. Martin Luther King's image. So after this march on Washington, Bayard Rustin just kind of, went away and he kind of separated himself from the civil rights movement, after that occurred, because they came to him, even though they had other information on Dr. Martin Luther King, such as his infidelity that he was taking part in, against his wife and things like that. But one of the things they felt that would hurt his campaign the most, the civil rights campaign the most, was being associated with Bayard Rustin. But keep in mind, he was a messenger. He was a messenger behind the back of Dr. Martin Luther King and the fight for civil rights. Now, this was the assimilation part came in at, and the nationality part took a seat. The fight for nationality took a seat in knowing who we are. Now, this is where we're going to get into. Now, this is when Prophet Noble Drew Ali, he was fighting for nationality is the order of the day. And this is what's not being talked about. It's not being talked about who this man is and what it represents, because this would truly, and be able to understand nationality, sovereignty, self-determination, that means standing up. That means the Asiatic black man and woman, the Moabite black man and woman, the melanated black man and woman, however you want to chop it up. Once those people that has been classified in the racial construct of black, Negro, or color, once they identify who they are based off this teaching and understanding, which Prophet Noble Drew Ali were bringing as being a messenger and bringing to the people, once these people stand up and get information, it's game over. So that end of that last end that Kendrick Lamar, when he put game over, that means that game over. What I caught from the game over when that came on, for me, I caught was it's time to know who you are, self-determination, get in alignment, and time to mobilize for our liberation. So that's what I got from the game over. That's what game over. It will be game over for them, for the oppressor, for the people who has us in these status and separating us from the resources of the land. It will be game over for them, but it will not be game over for us. It will be jubilee. It will truly be jubilee. So let's look at who is this Prophet Noble Drew Ali. I know we have our Moorish scholars that goes very deep into this, but I'm going to give it on a very elementary type for true understanding of who Prophet Noble Drew Ali was and is, because the spirit of Prophet Noble Drew Ali still lives today. Now, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, he was born Timothy Drew in 1886. He was a pioneering spiritual leader and activist who founded the Canaanite Temple in Newark, New Jersey in 1913, which later evolved in the Moorish Science Temple of America. Now, his teaching led the groundwork for Black identity, sovereignty, and empowerment. Let's keep in mind that Noble Drew Ali, the movement of the Moorish Science Temple, came after the heel of the destruction of the Garveyite movement. Now, after the Garveyite movement was crushed, a lot of those people assimilated. Now, either they assimilated into the Moorish Science Temple of America, they assimilated into the Moorish Science Temple because they had a very large base of Garveyites, but those people also understood nationality, but there was an element missing in the Garveyite movement. It was a movement to move people to the countries, the various countries in Africa. And our people, you always have a spiritual knowing. Not everyone were laid down. The ancestral lineage is in America. So that was one of the setbacks of the Garveyite. And with the movement being tarnished and ravished, and Marcus Garvey being, exiled, the people that believed in the movement, they moved over to the Moorish Science Temple of America movement. All right, and building that. So as that was building, now let's look at his teaching laid the groundwork for Black identity, sovereignty, and empowerment. His central teachings emphasized national identity, that the people classified as Negroes or Black are descendants of the ancient Moors with a direct link to a noble and sovereign heritage. Now, his teachings inspired later leaders, including the Nation of Islam. Let's look at that. So you have people such as Farrakhan, who has very much knowledge. I had to take a drink on that. Who has the knowledge to know that the teaching of Prophet Noble Drew Ali is right and exact. Now, which led to, it said it inspired the later teachings such as the Nation of Islam, figures like Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, and Louis Farrakhan. They are very aware of the teachings of Prophet Noble Drew Ali. They are well aware that those teachings are right and exact. And we're going to show you that. Let's look at that. Let's look at that. Where'd they go? Let's look at that. Now let's look at this statement. I want to first look at this statement here. Let's look at this statement was made. A statement from Louis Farrakhan. And this statement went, Noble Drew Ali is the father of what you call the Moorish Americans or the Moorish scientists. Noble Drew Ali was admired by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad because he said that Noble Drew Ali gave us a start in a direction towards Islam. The Moorish brothers wore feathers and the crescent and the tassels swinging freely, and they wore the name Bay or El. It was a start to get rid of the slave master's name. So that's what we talk about, hidden, the hidden narrative to the hidden narrative of identifying and knowing who someone is at this time. I want to pull this up. I think it's a great way to segment. I hope we don't get hit for this. We're just gonna watch a little bit of it. And this is a video, and one of our brothers, Bay's Bazaar site. You can go there, and it's a video that shows where Farrakhan is giving a speech talking about this. Let's look at this.
This great city ended in 1913. Brother Noble Drew Ali set up the Canaanite temple in Newark. It's very, very important because 1914 ended the time of the devil. According to what Allah revealed to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, his time was up to rule us. We are now in our time, and he's in our time. It's very important because Noble Drew Ali was the prime predecessor of Master Farad Muhammad, bringing Islam to the black man of America. While Mr. Garvey would not teach religion, though a Muslim influenced him, he did not feel it was his place to teach religion. And Mr. Garvey struck more success with the common man by a more nationalistic Pan-African approach, which had something to do with access to land and freedom.
All right, land and freedom. So Mr. Farrakhan is quite aware. All right, let's come back to this. So Minister Farrakhan is very aware of nationality. He's very aware of self-determination. He's very aware of sovereignty. So to say Nation of Islam is a nation of a nation, but however, the Nation of Islam has not taken their place in affairs upon man, we have to question that. We have to question why, Minister Farrakhan, you're well aware of the works of Prophet Noble Drew Ali. You're well aware of the works of Marcus Garvey. You're well aware of the usurpation of the land. You're quite aware of that, but you have this body of men, and that you build up the body of men, you have the body of women, and there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect in being able to showcase the importance of nationality. We have to question these things. We have to look at this. We have to look at it in its entirety. Why is this happening? Why is this taking place? Now let's look at this. We talk about the basis of civilization. Let's talk about the Moorish Science Temple, a nation de jure within a nation de facto. We talk about the God principle. The God principle of which the Moorish Science Temple operate is the Circle 7. And it's Islam. But within Islam, it is the ability to be able to understand all the teachings of the various religions. But it deals with the working of the inner man. Now, also in law, the jurisprudence of Moorish Science Temple, when it's operating as far as in law, it operates in positive law, not negative law or statute codes and ordinance. It always demands and commands that the de facto nation to communicate in the way of its jurisprudence of positive law. In language, the Moorish Science, it speaks the language of Aramaic, in English as well, and dealing with the true science and meaning of the word. Now, the people, there's a constitution within the Moorish Science Temple, a nation de jure within a nation de facto. They have a constitution that deals with the indigenous people, but also in that constitution, it negates, it's not about the native, the immigrant, the immigree, or the refugee, or the asylum seeker. The Constitution is about the protection for the autochthonous indigenous people. And let's look at that. Let's look at the moral principles of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Like I said, let's look at they have what you call the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, which is called a Circle 7. Let's look at some of the chapters, precepts of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Let's look at identity and divine origins. We are returning to Islam, which was founded by our forefathers for our earthly and divine salvation. This is chapter 45 that deals with the divine origin of the Asiatic nations. Let's look at number 2, knowledge of self and purpose. This said man must be the truth if he would know the truth. Chapter 7, the friendship of Jesus and Lamas. Let's deal with overcoming adversity and the struggle for freedom. They say the fallen sons and daughters of the Asiatic nation of North America need to learn to love instead of hate and know of their higher self and lower self. This is chapter 1, the creation and fall of man. Let's look at the unity and sovereignty. A nation without a prophet is like a sheep without a is like a ship without a captain. This is chapter 48, the Moorish nationality and divine creed. All right. Now let's also look at, and I'm showing you these things because this is how a nation is built. It's built off the moral compass. You must, and within that moral compass, you must have a guide. So the guide is the Circle 7 of the Moorish Science Temple. All right. The Constitution, there's a divine constitution and bylaws, nationality and civic duty. The Moorish Science Temple of America is a religious corporation designed to uplift fallen humanity and to teach those things necessary to make our members better citizens. Are you talking about U.S. citizens? No, citizens of the Moorish nation. The Moorish Science Temple of America. Act 1. Number 2, allegiance and lawful conduct. All members must obey the laws of the government because by being Moorish Americans, you are part and parcel of this said government and must live the life accordingly. Act 5. Let's get into that. Part and parcel. That's your public side dealing with your private side. Okay, the private is your divine creed, your right to self-determination. That's being parcel. To be a part of something, there's an understanding of the public side, a foreign jurisdiction that has jurisdictional rights over the territory. That's why I say it's a nation de jure within a nation de facto. The Moorish Science Temple is the nation de jure that is within a nation de facto, that it has been usurped by a de facto nation. They have jurisdictional control over the territory of the United States. And it said you act accordingly. It must live the life accordingly. Act 5. But there is a separation between the public and the private that must be understood. All right, leadership and responsibility. The prophet is the founder of the Moorish Science Temple of America and the head of this organization. He must be obeyed, and he is the sole goal of this body, which means that the divine, the words, and to be able to teach the people to move forward and understand their nationality, understand who they are, their divine creed. This is Act 2. This deal with the leadership and responsibility of the people. That's said, nationality is the order of the day. All right. And let's look at this. Now, when you're out here in this foreign jurisdiction, you have a flag that is placed on the conveyance of the vehicle. That in all nations, that is their flag. They want to see that flag flown to say, hey, you're a part of the United States corporation as a citizen. That's why when someone get pulled over and you have people that have the flag, they have tag plates to say private, and there's a disagreement between that person private conveyance and being a part of the public U.S. jurisdiction. The Moorish flag, there's a difference. People say, well, oh, Tamara, you have, the Kingdom of Morocco. I'm going to show you the difference. The Moorish flag with a 5-pointed green star in the center. And as you can see, it's a little pixelated. But as you can see, the Moroccan flag, now that the Moroccan flag was re-raised. But what they did, they interlaced the star with black borders, which means that they were raised back up to become back connected with the Moroccan Empire. So that's why you can see the similarity, but you can see the sigil where they interlocked. It's like making it bolder. They interlock the flag to say they are back in alignment with the Moroccan Empire. So this is the original Moorish flag that you see the Moorish Americans fly when they're in the American jurisdiction. This is the flag that they fly to show their connections to the Moroccan Empire. Now, this is the danger behind continue to stay in a status. We talked behind that. This is the danger behind continue to stay in a status of Black racial identity. It leads you to a status to be called politically. We say politically. This is political science. We're dealing with the public. You're identified as civiliter mortuus, and it's a Latin legal term meaning civilly dead, and it's referring to a person who has lost all civil rights through banishment, conviction, or Mosaic vows. Now, when we say, we talked about the moral compass. So when you're identified with something other than your nationality, your divine creed, you're considered to be civiliter mortuus, which means politically you're civilly dead. A political reference to legal death, certificate of posthumous legal matters. So that's why in the U.S. jurisdiction, they have what you call a birth certificate. In your nation, you have what you call a live birth. You have a live birth. And a lot of times those live birth was written in the Bible to show that you came into this earth plane. Now, civil liter, possibly a discussion on legal offspring, legitimacy, and inheritance in civil law. This is dealing with the political science and law, how you're operating, how you're defined in law. This is not defining you as far as divine. This is operating in the public and defining as law. Because when you're coded as being out of your nation, now you're able to be classified as a racial identity. Now, legal definitions of citizenship within a nation, a foreign nation, is based off right of the soil, just solely, which deals with birthright, term, and citizenship. That's right of the soil. This is what Trump is being challenged. He's challenging the Supreme Court. He's challenging the U.S. Constitution about just solely right of the soil, versus Joe Sanguinis deals with right of the blood, which is tied to nationality, and that citizenship is based on ancestry. The just sanguinis is what Prophet Noble Drew Ali ties you back to, which is your national principles and your ancestry, your folklores. And however, the naturalization ties to right of the soil, just solely. Citizenship is granted under fulfilling residency, language, and legal, not lawful, legal requirements. So the danger here, we talked about, there must be a get out method that occur. And the get out method is what is being hidden when you hide this person right here. When they hide this person right, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, they're hiding nationality is the order of the day. This is what they do not want to come up as being a part of the movement. They do not want this part to come up to be a part of that movement like us, because when that occurs, it's officially game over. So this is the fight. This was a fight for the people that has been taking place from, we talked about Mom Bett, we talked about Robert Smalls, we talked about Callie House, we talked about Bayard Rustin, and we talked about the main feature of what they would like to keep hidden, and that's Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Because knowing Prophet Drew Ali leads to your salvation and leads to your liberation. All right, so this is a lot of information to digest. Please go back, rewind, take it in. Now I have coming soon, I have my book. I'm very excited about this book coming out. It's called Sacred Selfishness, The Art of Loving Without Losing Yourself, by myself, Tamara L. And it say, are you ready to reclaim your power in love? It say, what if you never had a chance to love again? What if you could give love without exhausting yourself? What if putting yourself first actually made your relationship stronger? This book will teach you how to love from abundance, not scarcity, how to prioritize yourself without guilt, how to love deeply while standing fully in your power. The release date I've set for April the 22nd, 2025. I'm working on getting the website done at this time. This book will also help you understand the importance of nationality, self-determination, and who you are divinely. So I'm very excited about this book coming out. Please continue to tune in every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're not monetizing on YouTube. And like you said, please continue to support the channel via Cash App at $ Just Another Messenger. And if you'd like to be a part of the conversation that matters, because we're more than just talk, please feel free to send us an email to justanothermessengerpodcast@gmail.com. Like I said, please tell everyone to go over to YouTube, like, comment, share, subscribe. Let's get those numbers up. We're excited about that. Thank you for tuning in tonight. I really enjoyed this. I hope this information, like I said, did not want to bring this information in a way where it be too heavyweight and too above the people's head, because the goal is to really unveil this in a way to where it can the masses can see the beauty of being able to see all the different freedom fighters that you probably never heard about. And if you did hear about them, it was in pieces here, but pieces there. But I wanted to be able to show a compilation of the hidden freedom fighters and to show how the fight has always been taking place and still taking place. And even through the music of Kendrick Lamar, Not Like Us, let's go ahead and push that needle forward toward our liberation. Thank you for tuning in. and have a good night.